Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Theory. Today we have Kristen from Georgia, and she wanted to share some of her encounters and experiences with all of us. Kristen has had many experiences in her life, and she has been researching the topic ever since. She is a part of the North Georgia Cryptid Research Group, and they go out into different areas looking for Bigfoot and any evidence they can find regarding the subject. If you enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please give this video a thumbs up, and if you can, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have had a Bigfoot encounter anywhere in North America, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive straight into this next episode here on Sasquatch Theory. Kristen, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for asking. Kristen, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Sure, I'd love to. So my name is Kristen. I am now 38 years old. I was born and raised in a small little town in Northeast Georgia. It's called Elberton. I've lived there pretty much my whole life. I've left, come back, left, but I've come back again. So it's home sweet home for me. My parents purchased a 30-acre tract of property close to Broad River, round about when I was 10 years old, give or take. I was a kiddo. Had to do some clearing off of the land, and they made it our new home. And that's where the Bigfoot encounters began. It all started immediately after the home was done. My mom, who was outside on the back porch, we're in the middle of the woods. She was actually thinking to herself how peaceful it was because we moved from the city to the country. And she was like, it's so peaceful. You can hear the crickets. It was, a warm summer night, and windows were open in the house, doors unlocked. It was peaceful. I was actually inside of the home. My dad was out of town on a job. And next thing I know, my mom comes running in the house, shutting windows, locking doors, absolutely terrified. Mama was saying, Kristen, you're not going outside. No more going outside, because at that age, I still like to go outside and play and venture. She's like, you're not going outside. She said, there's something outside. She described as being yelled and roared at. There is a creek on the property that connects to we call it a beaver swamp, but it's a huge pond area that has been backed up over years and years, and lots of beavers. So it stretches across several people's property, and this actually ends up dumping into Broad River. So the creek, whatever was roaring at her, was across the creek. We did some research. The only thing that my mom could find that this sound compared to was the roar of an angry male lion and a silverback gorilla. She said if you put those two together and amplified it, the power behind it, just amplified that, she said you would have whatever this thing was. That was the one and only time we had that roar happen. So time passed. Mom got over the fright. I went back out playing. We were putting fence line up, I'm saying about 3-4 years later, towards the outside corner of the property. Plan was to get horses, goats, which we actually did end up getting. So I was still, loved to go out and play on my own. Had a dog. His name was Buddy. He was a pretty big dog. My mom and dad were further down on the property line, putting in fence posts. I was actually closer to the creek, just messing around. And I had to go to the bathroom. So I squatted down to use the bathroom. And I heard someone, or what I thought was someone, walking up on me. But you could hear the heavy footfalls, boom, 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 coming closer. So, of course, I hollered out, Daddy. Monday's a bigger guy. I said, Daddy, because I didn't want him walking up on me while I was using the bathroom in the woods. I heard nothing. So I stood up. About that time, the dog Buddy went on alert. It was like he could see or sense something from the footsteps area that I could not. And the dog went off to investigate. Well, next thing I know, the dog comes running back, passes me with its tail tucked between his legs, jumps over the creek. Well, I thought, goodness, if this dog is running because he was a very aggressive dog, then it must be bad. So I took off running, and you could hear whatever this was chasing me. It was, the stride wasn't fast, like boom, boom, boom. It was a boom, boom, but it was gaining up on me pretty quick. I jumped the creek. It stopped. The dog was terrified. So, like I said, I cannot say that was Bigfoot, but as heavy as those footfalls were, and as fast as it was coming up on me, it had to be something. I believe it was something else. So some more time passed on. Right at the age of 16 years old, I played in a country band with my parents. And everyone else in the band was my parents' age. So I was 16 at the time. They were in their mid-50s, roundabout. So we were on break from band practice. And the lead singer's wife and I decided to hop on the ATV and go to the very back end of the 30 acres, right where the creek and the beaver pond meet, right out on the corner. And we decided to do this because if you looked out over the beaver pond, you could see eagle nests. So she wanted to see these eagle nests we had been talking about in person. So here we go. We have to park on top of the ridge and walk down what we call a pig path here in Georgia. It's just like a little path through the woods. Walk down the little pig path to get out on the corner of the point where the pond and the creek meet. So we were down there looking at the nest, and it was summer. All the leaves were on the trees. It was a warm day. It was pretty sunny, although it was getting closer to dusk. It was later in the evening. So we were minding our own business when all of a sudden the woods became dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Normally you hear a bird, you hear the wildlife, you hear the movement of the forest. This was a dead silence. And then next thing we know, here comes something on the side of the ridge towards us. This thing was coming quick. It was making itself known. There's a lot of underbrush, smaller trees along the larger trees. And whatever this was, it was coming down the side of the ridge. You could see the brushes just kind of being laid over and just pushed over. I turn around, she turns around. As we're turning around, this thing is now between us and the four-wheeler, like blocking us. So we've got nowhere to go. The only place to go, we can jump in the water. She's screaming. I'm not screaming. I'm just terrified and confused because I don't know what this is. Yes, we have bear on the property. Yes, we have bobcats. Yes, we have all kind of wildlife. I've come into contact with those critters, but this was not a critter. This was not an animal. Neither was it a human. It was way too big to be a human. Well, she's screaming, "We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die." She grabs me and puts me out in front of her. Like, I feel like I'm being offered up for sacrifice at this point. Now it's kind of funny. At that point, it was not, because then I'm like, oh dear, I really may die. But this thing, it just stands there. Like I said, the woods are dead silent. It's not making a noise, but you can see through the brush, the leaves in the trees, you can see the blocked out dark mass of this thing. I've stood next to Georgia football players with all of their helmet and their gear on and their pads, and I mean they're big. They're quite massive in size. And I would compare this thing to the width, if not wider, than one of the Georgia football players. And I'm just estimating about 7 foot tall, somewhere right in there, but a massive creature. I can't see detail because if you've been in the woods, if you see something up in the woods, you can see there's something there, but you may not see the detail. You can see how, like I said, the mass is blacked out in the bushes and in the trees. But it never moves. It never makes a sound. We're standing there terrified. What seems like 30 minutes is probably more like 5 seconds, maybe 10, but it seems like forever. This thing turns and walks off. And when it walks off, you can clearly hear not only 2 bipedal footsteps, but once it hits the little pig path that we come down, as it walks, its arm swings out. And that is what I paid attention to, was that arm that swung out. I clearly saw it would be like the forearm, I guess, elbow area, and the hand. That's what sticks out in my mind. I focused in on that. It was at that point that I knew this was not a human. And this was not a bear on 2 feet. Like so many people have said, there was probably a bear on 2 feet. I don't know what it was, but it was massive and it had hands. Well, it casually walked off like it had not a care in the world. It come at us like it was going to kill us. And it walked off like just as peaceful as it could be. Once we could no longer hear the footfalls, we took off running. We ran so fast, hopped on the 4-wheeler, took off back up. It's a road. I wouldn't call it a road. It's like where a bulldozer had come down there and scraped a road so you could get to the back of the property. So we got on the ATV and booked it back to the studio. The whole ride there, it was like in a nightmare, because if you've ever had a nightmare where something is chasing you and you just cannot run fast enough, you cannot get away fast enough, it was just like the nightmare. Even though we were looking back, we didn't see it, but it scared us that bad. Then we get back and, of course, tell everybody what we saw. Of course, they were laughing at us and saying, "You saw a bear." My dad was even like, "Oh, it was a bear." I'm like, "It was not a bear." So that was my first sighting that changed my life, because after that, yes, I was scared, but I was interested. I was intrigued. I wanted to know more. And it took a little while, but I was like, I honestly think I saw Bigfoot. At 16 years old, my mind, Bigfoot does not exist in Northeast Georgia. Yes, I've seen I've seen it on TV. They live far to the northwest. They're not in Northeast Georgia. Now, I've become a nurse, still had some experiences. I actually moved down my parents' home before I got my nursing degree. But there was a time when we had a really nice snow here in Georgia. And my parents were checking, actually, my mom was checking the property line, because by that time there were goats, we had a horse, there were chickens, all good stuff. And she noticed a little footprint in the snow, and she was able to follow these little footprints, and then they would disappear. And then there would be another footprint or two. She became a little nervous because she felt like someone was watching her. And then she got to thinking, if this is a baby Bigfoot, then there's mama probably somewhere near. And it made me think, and actually going back and thinking now, the way that the creature come at Susie and I, that was the lady I was with, reminded me of how a mother dog will protect their puppies, or something charges at you to protect your baby or their baby. So cannot say that's what was going on, but that's kind of the feeling that I got. But I had that experience. Then come to find out the neighbors also had some experiences as well. They had seen what was called the creature, and guests of the neighbors, they had seen it. It had been spotted numerous times. So that's when I come to realize, okay, A, I'm not crazy. B, what I saw, I really did see. And I'm not alone. Other people have seen this thing in Elberton, Georgia as well. So it set me out on a path of research. And that's where my Bigfoot journey began. I not only researched Bigfoot, Sasquatch, but also other things I've experienced in the field. I'm open now to whatever, but Bigfoot is the heart of my research. We actually research in the Southeast. I belong to a couple groups. One is ASOG, Anomalous Studies and Observation Groups, and the other is North Georgia Cryptid Researchers, NGCR. Sadly, we lost the founder of NGCR just last month to cancer. That'd be Bob Grumpy Wilson. But I've been fortunate enough to go out in many states and look for this creature. In November of last year, we were out on an expedition, and I got the heebie-jeebies, as I call it, and had a thermal. I upgrade. I've got a thermal. Put the thermal on where I felt the heebie-jeebies coming from, and also had heard a stick break. And just real quickly, but I actually have a video of this bipedal creature that looks like a Sasquatch standing in front of me, and it turns and then it walks off. And I actually caught it on video as well of it peeking out behind a tree. So I had that experience. Backing up to, was it 2 years ago now? We found a footprint, a very good footprint out of a track line of footprints that we ended up casting. It was right at 18 inches long. And I still have that cast to this day. So whatever I saw at 16 years old, my mom heard when I was about 10. I do believe it's still in the area. Also, I was lucky enough to cast what I believe is a juvenile footprint or juvenile Bigfoot footprint. And it was right at about 3.5, 4 inches long. And it was just on the ridge opposite of where I casted this large footprint. So possibly mom or dad and young. And it's got the cutest little toes. I will say that. It's got cute little toes, but the larger footprint, you can see a mid-tarsal break. I know that's common a lot of Bigfoot casting. It's common finding on them. And it has 5 toes. I don't know what, like I said, I don't know what it is. I didn't see this animal, but how it come across the creek and it would go up the hill, up the ridge a little. And it was weird because it would then backtrack and zigzag down. And then it would go back up the ridge and then backtrack again. It was like zigzagging as it was going up the ridge. So I feel if this was a human, which with really huge feet, or if it was someone trying to fake a track, which not sure why they would, it's 30 acres of private property. It'd be very odd how they would zigzag up and down the ridge. And then also just the finding of the baby track it made my day. So still have those tracks to this day. And sadly, the property just sold, so we don't have access anymore to the property. But I do believe they're still here in the area in Elberton. I've also filmed a thermal of an upright figure towards Lake Russell as well. So I'm not saying they're just on my parents' property close to Broad River, but this area was actually more towards Lake Russell, and it was a thermal image as well, a thermal video too.
Thank you for sharing. Could
I'm
you
sure.
do you have the thermal video, and is there anywhere we can see it?
Yes, yes, I actually do. And I can actually get that over to you. It'd probably be easier. The file's so large. I have trouble. I've sent it to people in the group, but I have to do the. It's just a disaster trying to send it because of the file being so large. And it's, with me, I was shaking around and moving the camera. So in the still shots, it's plain as day. And I'd be glad to send that over.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you can use like Dropbox or Google Drive to share the video one day. And
Oh, true.
yes, send some photos of the tracks that you casted. Do you have a
Yes,
cast of the juvenile footprint?
I do. I do. And I can send over pictures of, like you said, the large cast and also the small cast as well.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. And do you have more encounters after this? Anything else that's happened?
Um, are you talking about Bigfoot related or a little off topic of Bigfoot?
Anything. After you started
Anything.
researching, what else did you come across? Any UFOs, other cryptids, paranormal activity, whatever you want to talk about, I'm open to it.
Awesome. Yeah, yes. As I said before, my main area of research is Bigfoot, but I've experienced other things in the woods that are not, I'm not going to say it's not Bigfoot, but it doesn't seem like Bigfoot. In North Carolina, I was on a research outing, and in the woods, we come across, I don't know how others say this other than it was basically orbs. That experience was just as amazing as my Sasquatch experience because I can't explain it. We watched, and we, as in my research group, we watched as a group a ball of, I'd say it's more of a, I wouldn't say amber, but a light amber colored, a very large ball of light. In front of us, morph from 1 to 2 to 4 balls of light. And these balls of light were rotating around each other. Now, Grumpy, Bob Wilson, as I mentioned him just earlier, mentioned him before, he took his headlamp and lit the area up and he said, I'm looking for monsters. And they went away, they were gone. But before he did that, we were all just standing in awe because there was no source of this light. You could see through the light, it was not solid. I tried to get an image on my phone. My phone died. I had like old style camera, like actual camera. I tried to use that. It worked for like a few seconds. It died. I had thermal and also night vision with me, and it did not show up on thermal or night vision. So whatever the light source was not a heat source because thermal didn't pick it up, and nor was I seeing it on night vision. But as soon as you would take night vision or thermal down from your eye, you could see it. But I was just in such a hurry. I was like, oh my gosh, no one is going to believe this. I've got to capture this. I'm all about trying to record something. That way I can share it with others. But I couldn't. So this memory lives on forever, and so does it in the heads of the other people, because we talk about that incident frequently. But they were beautiful, and whatever this was, we believe had intelligence behind it. So it wasn't just like these swamp gas theories you hear of, because these lights actually come towards us. They started coming towards us, and that's when Bob turned his headlamp on. But just seeing these things more from one huge, beautiful ball of light to 4 and then rotate, we have no explanation for. So we call them orbs. Our K2 meters, one incident we found on was our K2 meters were all pegging red. Well, once he lit up the area, these orbs disappeared. We continued on with our expedition. Like I said, we were looking for Bigfoot, signs of Bigfoot. We continued on with our expedition. I don't think anything else happened that evening, so we come back the same way we come in. And in that same area where we had the orbs, our K2 meters pegged again. We didn't have any orbs at that time, but it's just odd finding that the K2 meters went off. And this isn't the first encounter of orbs or lights we see while Bigfooting. We've, in one of our research areas, we call the Meadow. And there's actually a book, it's The Meadow Project, South Skinwalker Ranch by Trey Hudson. We have had multiple orbs we will see, but they're not as bright, they're not as lingering, and they're more formed, I guess you could say. But oftentimes we will see lights in the woods and there's no source of that light. And in the same area, it's full of high strangeness, absolutely full. We had an incident where I captured on video what I think to be a portal, and what my group also thinks to be a portal. It was an odd night anyway, before and after the event. But as to sum it all up, because I could speak on this for an hour just in itself. One of the guys I was with, David, I hear him talking to another guy. We were set up in a team of 4, had other teams dispersed through the meadow. And I hear David talking. Well, next thing I know, David, he's like, hey, would you look at this through your thermal to see if you're seeing what I'm seeing? Well, if I'm looking through his thermal first, and I see it's a box or outline of a box. And when I say a box, it's a very large box that's putting out heat. And right beside it is a cross. It's an upside down cross with another line up above that as well. So of course I grabbed my thermal and I have to find it. So I'm looking, I'm recording. I lock down on this thing and it's actually slowly fading away by the time I get my thermal on it. I wish I could have been a little bit quicker. But he's recording. I'm recording. He's not recording. Well, this thing disappears. We radio to the other people in the group, say, hey, we've had this happen. So our team gathers in the center of the meadow and they agree. We're like, okay, we're going to send a team into this box or the location of the box, the cube. We had a couple members go towards the box. David and I are directing them. I'm actually still recording on my thermal. And they start walking right where this box has dissipated at, and they literally disappear off of the screen, off the thermal. I am trying to make sense of this in my mind. The only thing I'm making sense of is, okay, they've walked off into the wood line and thermal is no longer able to pick them up. And you can actually hear David saying, did they just disappear? And I'm going, oh no, I think maybe they're in just the woods. So they're gone for less than a minute. And then you see them coming back out and they're re-emerging onto thermal. We gather back up as a group, and the ones that walked into this portal, cube, box, whatever you want to call it, said when they walked into this, the environment changed. The atmosphere changed. It was like a black curtain was dropped down in front of them. And they said walking into this area, they were able to walk through like a pastured area. Coming out, they were getting caught in briars and little thickets of, low-lying brush. They were having to kind of pull their way through that. While walking in, they didn't. We went back and recreated the same time of year, and it was cold, so there wasn't hardly any leaves on the trees. It was cold at that time. So we recreated this, and there is no pollen to the wood line, and thermal didn't pick them up. You can see them clearly with each step they took. There was no covering of them with any type of brush. It's actually a sparse area where we call the meadow. The woods are not that thick. But in my mind, that was the only thing that made sense at the time. When the incident, we call it the night of the portal, when that happened, there was also a lady that showed up at base camp. And this was very late at night. If I'm not mistaken, it was around midnight or so, who was trying to get us to leave the area and come with her at that time to look for monkey bears. And what she was saying, it was just a very odd timing. And in the midst of her speaking and trying to get us to leave at that time, she pulls down her pants in front of us and uses the bathroom right in front of us. And
that's wild.
Very wild. I mean, that whole night, none of it made sense. So I think when she saw we were not leaving that area, she left. We actually did leave and go and down this road she told us to go down to look for these monkey bears. And of course, it was nothing but a random road. But that whole night of the portal, the cube, whatever you want to call it, was just odd. And since then, Tim and Bob that walked into the portal, they have both passed away. Tim actually passed suddenly, unexpectedly. And then the year later, we lost Bob Grumpy, which was just this year. So Tim passed, 2 years ago?
I'm sorry to hear about that. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly happened to them? Did they develop cancer or something like that?
Bob ended up being diagnosed with cancer. And as far as Tim, he started having some type of lung issue, started having a lot of shortness of breath. And when he collapsed and passed, and Tim's a younger guy. I'm saying Tim was 50 and absolutely in amazing shape. I mean, the best possible shape. So we're not sure we can't say the portal incident had something to do with their health issues. But we have found that a lot of people in our group, after having an odd encounter, odd experience, go on. Some, like I myself, have been diagnosed with some odd health issues, and some that they still cannot diagnose me with because they say, we don't know what's wrong with you. Now, does that correlate with our research in these areas of high strangeness, or is it just coincidence? Not sure. I know that we've actually started carrying with us EMF detectors and Geiger counters. We do have large spikes of radiation in certain areas that we research. And also when something strange is happening, radiation spikes will just appear. We don't know what that is, but that we're out there investigating that. Like I said, we investigate anything odd now in the forest, although Bigfoot is our basis for our research.
Yeah. It's the ground foundation of everything you do out there, huh?
Right. It is. But we've learned that Sasquatch isn't the only thing odd out there. There's a lot of other things.
Yeah, that's what I've come to find out too. There's a lot going out there, a lot more than Bigfoot. And it blows my mind that people can't even comprehend the Bigfoot activity and they have no idea what else is truly out there.
I totally agree with you. Completely agree with you. Trying to think of some other odd occurrences. We've had some bouts of Bob. Bless Bob's heart. He was like the magnet of strangeness. Just a quick story. We were researching in the meadow, and we know the way from base camp to the meadow. So we're all familiar with this path. And at one point, you have to go either under or over this large fallen tree, which is now actually it's not there anymore. But Bob said he went under the tree, and then next thing he knew, he was on top of the ridge that leads into the meadow. And in between this tree and the ridge he spoke of is a very large distance. I mean, you go uphill around another tree, a little curvy. You don't just go from point A to point B and there's the meadow. So
Like he was transported somewhere else? Or
that's what we were wondering, because he doesn't remember the points in between the tree and the meadow. He said it was just like, I went up around the tree and I was here on top of the ridge. So, of course, we start doing the medical. Is he having a stroke? Is there something medical going on? How come you don't remember walking from tree to meadow? That doesn't make sense. We all know this path like the back of our hand. So we okay, well, medically you're okay. We don't know what happened. Well, we reconvened the next day, and Bob always kept the breadcrumbs on his GPS so he could follow her. And it shows him at the point of where the fallen tree is, but it shows him going across the creek and then back across the creek again, and then jumping across the creek on further way up in the woods, and then to the point of the top of the ridge. We all saw this, and that makes absolutely zero sense, because you cannot cross the creek that runs by the meadow without getting soaking wet. I mean, it's a deep creek, but yet his breadcrumbs has him going back and forth across the creek up in the woods, and we could not figure that out. So he was like, all right, well, I'm saving this because this is an unusual occurrence. He gets home, and the whole trackway from that night has been deleted off of his memory card. Gone. But I saw it with my own eyes. The group saw it. Unfortunately, we don't have proof of that, but we all saw it with our own eyes. But just like that instance, we've had other instances where we have captured things on camera or video, and when we get home, they are no longer there on our SD cards. We don't know what that is, but that was one occurrence we've had. Another strange incident was Bob again. He's making a round around the meadow, doing like a perimeter check, and also hoping that if there's a Sasquatch in the area, it will kind of follow him from the furthest point of the meadow and kind of lead it back towards us. And he was witnessed on thermal turning into a ball of light and zooming across the meadow at a rate you cannot run. And at that point, the meadow, the grass is about waist high and it's thick. So you can't even really run, even if you tried. It's just a steady trump through the meadow. But he literally turned into a ball of light and zoomed across the meadow and then reformed into a human figure. And that was early on in our investigation of the meadow. And it was also that night to where us as a group made the decision of, you will not research alone. If you go somewhere, you're taking somebody with you, because we do not understand what happened. This little ball of light and basically fly to the other end of the meadow. Now, you ask him, what was it like? He said, well, nothing. He said, I was walking along in a straight path from one point to the next. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I felt no different. Nothing happened to me. He said, I was just walking along. But something happened for us to witness him condensing into a ball, zooming across the meadow, and then reform into his human shape.
Yeah, that is strange. You guys saw them, like you physically saw them with your own eyes turn into a ball of
with
light with
with
thermal.
thermal.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And
Yeah, because it's pitch black. I mean, we investigate with lights out. We go out there, and every now and then we'll turn our headlamps on so we don't fall in a hole or step on a venomous snake or something like that. But
mhm.
for the most part of everything, it's lights out.
Wow. Yeah, that is very interesting. And I interviewed a lady from Georgia. She's a school teacher. I haven't posted this video yet, but she claims that she was at a conservation area at nighttime and she saw these orbs and she saw a creature step out of the orb. So I've talked about this
Mhm.
before several times on my channel, and it's my theory that the orb is the portal and these creatures come in and out of the portal
Mm.
using energy. And I think like when they're manifesting or transferring from area A to B, the orb will show up and that's how they move.
Mm.
But I,
That
I have no scientific evidence pointing towards that. This is just from experiences and taking reports from other people that I've concluded that.
and I can agree with that. And I'm like you. I have no proof. I've never seen a creature step out of an orb or out of a portal. And it's my opinion, my belief that you have your regular Sasquatch that is more ape-like. Like what I saw, it was I do believe 100% maybe ape and human. I don't know, but it was of this earth. And then I think maybe there's another species that is not of this earth that can move by portals and or go through dimensions. I don't know, but some things I've seen, like trackways, you can be following a foot track and it will disappear. And no matter how hard you look, you cannot find a track pass through tracking course. I have my tracker certification, so I do know how to track. And we cannot track these footfalls past a certain point. And that doesn't make sense to us if it's a flesh and blood object. It should carry on its foot track or backtrack. I understand that animals will do that, but it's not. It's just like it disappears. So maybe it is stepping into a portal or another dimension, a time slip. I don't know, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I think so too. And when your friend turned into a portal or into an orb, was there a color to it on the thermal? What it looked like? Was it like red or orange?
It was just a ball of light, like
Okay.
a white ball of light
And do you have
that
a
just
recording
zoomed
of
across.
this, or did it just happen so fast that you didn't have time to hit record?
It is unfortunately not recorded. We That was the night, like I said, we made the decision. Don't go anywhere alone researching because of instances like that. But also, when you bring your thermal to your eye or night vision, whatever you have, hit the recording button because we could have got an amazing video. And I've missed plenty of wonderful videos by not doing that. So just as a little tip to all the other researchers, I've had to learn it from experience. The minute you put your thermal night vision or something to your eye, hit the record button. You can always go back and delete it later if it's nothing on it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Me and my buddy, the Ozark Carry Man, that's what he goes by. We were basically at a conservation area. This is an area where I found these awesome structures. I was surrounded by them one day, and they did these loud, intense wood knocks whenever I was bow hunting. We went back there on thermal, and we just sat there at nighttime waiting for these things to come in. And they started wood knocking, breaking branches, and we were able to get a little bit of video of them, but it was like across the valley, so it was pretty blurry to say the least. But we did capture the activity on parabolic and on thermal, and unfortunately, like I said, it's just too far away to really tell what it is. So we
Mhm.
went back there. I don't know if it was a couple weeks later or same spot. He's looking in the direction where we captured the thermal, and I'm looking towards this conservation food plot. And whenever I swing around with my thermal, I'm not recording. I see this thing like crawling on all fours like a spider. It looks
Mhm.
like a human, like a bald human, like somebody that doesn't have hair. And it was
Yes.
crawling on all fours through that field, coming our way into the pine thicket. And it stuck its head up to the side because it noticed us and just shot out in a different direction. And I didn't hit record. But man, if I would have hit record, it would have been like perfect quality. And it just happened so fast. But I agree with you. Like, if you're going to be using that in the field, just record the whole time, because you don't know what you're going to see, and it's going to happen fast and it's going to be gone. So you don't have time to push that button. With mine, you have to hold it down for like 2 or 3 seconds, let go,
Mhm.
and then the little recording icon comes up. And then to stop it, you have to do the same thing. And it's really easy to lose your recording, and it takes a while for it to process. So, like, if something happens real quick, it takes a few seconds to record, to start
Mhm.
recording. So, it's just really tough to get these things on film or just capture this type of activity in general.
I agree. It's a lot of times the incidents will happen when you're least expecting it. And you can be sitting out in the woods for hours waiting on something to happen. But the minute you pack up and start to head out, you may hear a little movement behind you and you just grab up your thermal or night vision just to look so you can see. And there it is. And by the time you hit that record button, it is gone because they will disappear and run from you in a split second. Um, Also, like with my video I captured in November of last year, like I said, I felt something watching me. I heard that stick break. I had the heebie jeebies, and I was looking dead at it with my thermal. But I did not even know what I was capturing at that moment because of the heat signature. It was set on black hot, and whatever this thing was, what I almost say Bigfoot, um, was not black hot like if you were looking at a human. This was actually about the same color as the trees. So it did have some heat to it, but it was not a solid black hot like you and I would show up on thermal. So I did not even notice it at that time. I had no idea until I was reviewing footage about a month or so later, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I have something." And you can see it move, turn, walk away, peek out from trees. And at that time, I contributed my feeling of something being there with me and hearing that like stick break was I found some flying squirrels playing in the trees. And so my attention was then diverted to them. And I've got like over a minute of just watching them. And then I come back to that area where I feel like I was being watched. So at that time, I was like, well, gosh, I guess it's just the flying squirrels that I feel. Because animals at night, when it's quiet, a squirrel rustling around or a little rabbit can sound like a total monster coming up to you, and sounds are amplified. And I just happened to catch that, and I'm so thankful I hit that record button. So I always hit that record button when you look, always.
Yeah, yeah, it's a smart thing to do. And what type of thermal device are you using out in the field?
Currently, I use an ATN 4T. It is one of the latest ones. I just got it last year, put out by ATN. And so far, I've been pleased with. I've had a few mechanical issues, and they actually had to send me a new one. Um, but that was about the best 4 grand I've spent for me to catch that little creature on camera. Before that, I had a FLIR Scout 2, and that's what I used to capture the portal, and also what I used to capture the first thermal of what I believe was a Bigfoot close to Lake Russell.
Okay, so you're using pretty good technology for what
Yeah,
we're allowed to use as civilians, per se. And
yeah.
I wish these devices were as good as like what the military uses. Unfortunately, they don't allow us to have that type of stuff. And for the civilians that can buy like the high end night vision or thermal devices, it just costs a lot of money. So they make it impossible for regular people to afford these types of devices.
I agree. There's so much technology out there, but I am limited as to what I can afford. So I guess if you're rich, you have more chances of capturing a better video on thermal. But at the same time, if it's also you've got to get out there. And that's another thing I push to people that come back at me when they see my videos or my pictures. And I get laughed at a lot. I get laughed at a lot. And I'm like, well, come out with me. You need to experience this. If you don't get out in the woods, you won't ever experience it. And also, if you're saying this is something else, then what is it? Because I captured it. I just don't understand how people cannot open their mind and believe that there's something else out there other than us and the bears and the coyotes and the bobcats. That there's something big out there. And that's what our group is out there trying to do. We're trying to research and figure out what's going on. What are these things? And in the meantime, we're also finding orbs and portals and something possibly we don't know what they are. Oh, alien ET. I have been with another guy in Georgia researching. It is his video, so I'm not going to share it. It is copyrighted. And again, felt like something was there. So he is panning. I'm not sure what kind of unit he had at the time. And there is this little, we call it the troll figure, but there's this little, it looks like a little troll hanging on side of a tree. And when he hits it with his camera, this thing swings back behind the tree. And as he pans away from it, it swings back around and is looking at us. Now, is it a baby Bigfoot that's been stashed by mom in a tree? Is it, we don't know what it is, but it's plain as day. We are close to this little humanoid figure with this wild hair that reminds you of a troll. What is that? We don't know, but that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, that is interesting. Do you think that was a Bigfoot or something?
I think it was a juvenile Bigfoot, in my opinion, because you can, on the video and the stills, you can see almost like a brow ridge, and where the eyes are, it's more dark and sunken. I wouldn't say sunken in, but it's not as prominent. You can see the nose, you can see the mouth, and you can even see its hands wrapped around the tree. And I believe the troll appearance is like its little hair is just standing up. Like a lot of times you would see in a younger baby gorilla, how its little hair up top is just frazzled. I think it was a baby Bigfoot. It's caught on camera.
Yeah, it could have been. There's also like wild people out there. I don't know if you've ever heard those encounter stories where it's not a Bigfoot, but it's more of like this cannibalistic type of caveman looking creature. I can't remember the
I have
exact
heard.
name at the moment, but there's a lot of stories from like Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Louisiana. I'm sure you guys got them
I,
too.
yes, I've heard a lot of those stories. I haven't heard any in around here in Georgia where I'm at. I've heard of quite a few tales from Tennessee and around like the Klingman's Dome area. Even they describe them as almost being like Neanderthals or like the wild men of Tennessee. I, I haven't seen those. I haven't taken any reports of a wild man, but no, you can't discredit what people see out there and say they see. There's something out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what else have you experienced while doing research? I know you got more experiences. Any wood knocks, any thumps, anything like that?
I have had wood knocks, and I've actually experienced a power knock. And this was I was actually at the dam here in Elberton, and I worked night shift. So I'm up a lot in the middle of the night. Several years ago, I was bored at night. So I was like, I'm going to go down to the dam, drive down there, walk around because you can walk out on the dam. And peaceful summer night, and I was minding my own business and nobody else was around when I heard the loudest power knock I've ever heard in my life with tremendous force. So I didn't hang around too long because I was like, well, something knows I'm here. I'm by myself. I didn't bring my gun. I usually have a gun with me. I was like, I didn't bring my gun. So in case this thing does come after me, I have no experience with the power knock, as they call it. But I've heard several wood knocks just throughout the years while researching. I don't have any filmed or on a recorder. I wish I did. Even at my parents' property, we would have wood knocks. And we've also experienced things being thrown at us on my parents' property. Like it's got a creek. Like I said, the creek that runs on the property is actually in a deep gully. It's been there for so many years. It's eroded out and it's down in a gully. And sometimes you would be down in the creek and you would have like an acorn or rock get tossed at you. And you would look and there would be anything. A little while later, another acorn or rock would be tossed at you. They'd never hit you, but it would land beside you. So that has happened. Also, while research, we had a very odd night. I'll share really quick. Dave and I were researching in an area, and these things was actually, I say things because I don't know what they were. I can't see. I didn't see them with my own eyes. I can't see them. But it was at this man's house, and he was, I'm not going to say terrorized by them, but they would come up and slap the side of his house. They had two St. Bernards. One loved the St. Bernards, or I guess I should say the St. Bernard loved it. And the other St. Bernard was like almost terrified. So there was like a love-hate relationship between the dogs. But they were getting almost like terrorized. It would come up and it would eat the vegetables out of the garden. It actually split open like a little watermelon, and it ate the insides and put the watermelon back together and in the same spot it was sitting at. But we were researching activity, but we were getting pelted by rocks and hickory nuts. We were just getting pelted by those. And it was like they were playing with us, because you could hear it start from the top of the ridge and it would run down by us where it flattened out a little bit where the drive was, slap the well house, and continue on down towards the pond. And at one point, Dave had actually stepped away from me. He said this thing comes so close to him. He said I could hear its legs rubbing together. That was a night of just strangeness. We were just being played with, I felt like. But these things, they were not shy. We never caught any on thermal. We never caught any on night vision, but you could just hear them all around us. You would hear a wood knock, and then you would hear rustling over here, and then you would get a rock thrown at you, and then another would come from another direction. That was just a crazy night. Crazy night.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it certainly sounds like Sasquatch activity. I've heard from many people that they like eating watermelon, especially people from, I think, Michigan, that area up north. I'm not sure if it's Michigan, but wherever they grow watermelons, I've heard stories about the Sasquatch eating them. And what do you think it means whenever they slap the side of the house?
I didn't take that as a warning. I almost took it as a playful gesture, as like a juvenile, how a kid will just come to annoy you, like how they'll just poke you and run away or throw something at you, like they're just basically wanting to play. So I didn't feel like it was a threat, but it was definitely making itself well known. If it wanted to hurt us, we were just sitting ducks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great theory too. Maybe it's like tag, you're it when they slap the house. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yes. And the two dogs, like I said, one was afraid of it, and one loved it. So it would come up and slap the side of their house, and the dog would want to go outside. So I don't know if when it would slap the house, was it saying, let the dog out? I want to play. But the dog would get let out, and it had a huge fenced in area. And the owners, they said that you could see the dog at times, like running along the fence, like there was something else there. They just couldn't see it, like it was playing with something. So I guess this Saint Bernard and a Sasquatch had maybe built up a relationship. I don't know, but it was a very playful relationship. Of course, if it would have wanted to hurt the dog, all it had to do was jump the fence, which it would have been nothing. But now the other Saint Bernard was terrified to go outside when it would come up and slap the house. So
yeah,
very strange.
I've experienced that myself. One time in the Mark Twain National Forest, we were investigating an area where the property owner had some encounters, and the Sasquatch came up to the edge of the woods close to the yard right when it got dark, and they were wood knocking. I mean, these were like solid knocks for sure, 100% Sasquatch. They were breaking limbs and doing all kinds of things. There had been like 3 of them. So I put my audio recorder right there at the edge of the yard facing the woods, and I was able to capture a lot of this stuff. But whenever I was up there, I kept going up to the Sasquatch and like asking it questions like, what are you doing here? What are your intentions? Can you give me a wood knock? Can you push over a tree? And it did all those things. It never said anything back, of course, but at one point I heard something coming at me on all fours. It was coming out of the woods, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a Sasquatch. And once he got into the yard, there was some visible light. It was my friend Bill's dog, and he came out there with the Sasquatch. Like, he didn't like run scared with his tail between his legs. Like, it was like this was a routine thing. And we all talked about it. Like, he befriended the Sasquatch, or the Sasquatch made friends with him.
That's amazing. And you hear, like your story, you hear of that, but you also hear where dogs are being killed by Sasquatch, like they're flattened out or every bone gets broken. They're thinking they pick up a dog and slam it up against a tree. And so it's odd you get two totally different sides. One a friendly Sasquatch and one that wants to kill your pet.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, for some reason, like this whole conversation, my audio recorder keeps saying right error, and I think that's what happened the first time. So I'm not for sure if this is all recording, but we'll just talk like good friends and get to know each other and just keep talking about everything. If that's all right with you. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. I think I have to like update this thing or format the SD card, but we'll just pray that it worked, right?
Yes. And if not,
this is an excellent interview, and you've been doing an excellent job, and it's like, oh my God, I want to pull my hair out right now, but I'm just, what else can you do? You just got to stay positive.
That's true. Technical issues, it never fails.
It's never happened before. It's weird that all of a sudden, like, this thing's having issues. I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to say anything unusual is happening, like the government's listening, but I've never had this happen.
Huh. That is strange. But no, I'll keep talking. I'm trying to condense my experiences and stories, because if I begin speaking about one incident, I feel like I could speak on that one for just an hour straight. Well, then of course we would be here all day talking about everything. So for as far as my research goes, I really started researching hard, actually getting out in the woods and going out with groups about 10 years ago. So I've grown close to these guys I research with, and just the experiences are unbelievable. I know as soon as I get done speaking with you, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell them about that and this. And one thing I want to bring up that I've had happen, and I know other people have probably had happen as well, is disembodied voices or samurai chatter. We have got to experience that while in the woods. And yet again, we can't say, oh, it's Bigfoot or, oh, it's a ghost.
Mhm.
But pretty much all of the members in our group have experienced hearing a language, like two people or two creatures talking, but you cannot understand what they're saying. It's like they're speaking in a foreign language. And the night of the portal, or the incident of the cube, after that, we actually had some samurai chatter. Tim, myself, and David, we were actually grouped together, and we all three heard it at the same time. We did not have an audio recorder going. I'd already taken the SD card out of my, I was using a FLIR at that time. I'd taken the SD card out of the DVR day package. Because of all the incidences we've had of SD cards getting erased. So none of us had any recording devices on us at that time. So sadly, we were not able to capture that samurai chatter on audio. But we have had that. We have had disembodied voices. On the trip in November I went on, we were gathered around base camp, and I clearly heard my name called from the wood line. There was no mistaking a crow or somebody else. All the members of the group were accounted for and not in that area. But I clearly heard my name being yelled or hollered at from the wood line. Now, I didn't get up and I didn't go towards it, because I've heard sometimes they will do that when they're trying to lure people away for whatever reason.
Yeah, that is interesting. That property I told you about in the Mark Twain National Forest, the property owner that had the encounters, his name's Bill. He was camping in an area south of him because there had been reports there, and the Sasquatch came up to his tent and were like terrorizing him, like doing the monkey chatter, screaming and hollering. He had to shoot his 45 into the air, but he claims at one point one of them said, "Bill." And I'm like, "Are you sure they said your name? Like, did you call your wife and maybe they heard you, and like they heard your name or something?" He's like, no. He's like, "I didn't call my wife." And he said whenever he shot his 45 into the air, you could see like flame shoot out of the pistol. He said these things lost it whenever that happens.
Wow, that's amazing.
How do they know his name? You know what I mean? He's out there by himself. He didn't say, he wasn't talking to himself saying, "Bill, what are you going to do today?" You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes they can hear things and they mimic it, but how they knew that his name was Bill is freaky, and how they can like speak English, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
What it sound like? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What it sound like whenever they said your name? Who'd it sound like, or what it sound like?
It sounded like a guy in our group, David. It sounded like him. And I thought it was him, but I knew where David was, and David was not at the wood line in that area. But I heard Kristen, like it was like a Kristen, like come here, Chris. You know, it was like that Kristen, like, hey, like I would holler at you from across the room if I wanted you to come towards me.
Like Kristen.
It was like, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, And I asked a few other guys that were close to me, and said, "Did y'all hear my name?" They, no, but then again, the others, they were talking amongst themselves, but I clearly heard my name called from the wood line. There is no mistake. And that is the first time I've heard my name, or actually anyone's name, or English spoken to where you could hear what they were saying or what something was saying. Also, getting a little off topic of Bigfoot, something else I would like to go over is what we are now doing a lot while researching in different areas and getting amazing responses is the Estes protocol, or doing Estes session. And what this is it's you have the receiver, and then you have the interviewer. Someone in our group will put on headphones that's connected to like the spirit boxes where it skips through the AM or FM channels. It does constant sweeps. So a lot of paranormal ghost hunters will use this, and then you will hear a word or a voice come through that overrides the others. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of that before. I got like a little spirit box I bought from ghoststop.com, and it like goes through different channels and will say words.
That's it. That's exactly it. It's a lot of times a spirit box or a ghost box, but it sweeps through these channels. So the receiver will put in earbuds that's connected to the ghost box. Then on top of that, they will put on like the earmuffs, like the shooting muffs, to block out sound, and also wear a blindfold so that the only thing you are hearing is what's coming through that, I'll call it the spirit box. So they can't see either. Can't see, can't hear. Then you have an interviewer who has a list of questions that the receiver does not know the questions, but the interviewer does. The receiver just starts blurting out whatever they hear that comes over that spirit box. So we're conducting, instead of asking, what's your name or where are you from, we start diving a little bit more into portals, inner dimensions. Why are you here? Where do you come from? We're speaking, or the interviewer speaking to the listener, whoever this thing is out there, as a entity. So you will start asking questions like about the portal. And for instance, Trey would be like, did we once enter the portal? And it's odd, a lot of times Daryl, another guy in our group, he'll be a receiver. He will respond to Trey, and you will have like once. But you start noticing there is a two-way conversation going on between the interviewer and something in the universe. And it's coming through on that spirit box. We get answers like Nephilim come through. We get answers like witches. We asked at one point, are you of this earth? And it said that it once was of this earth. But if anyone can actually Google this isn't just exclusive to our group, but the SD sessions or SD's protocol, we are having amazing results with. And we had a film crew out with us in the meadow and decided, hey, we're going to try the SD session now. It's not Bigfoot, but it is odd. During the SD session, two of the film guys, it was actually a guy and a girl, saw these shadow figures standing behind us. It scared them so bad that they will not come out there with us again.
Yeah,
not only that, yes, and not only that, seeing the shadow figures at that time during the SD session, but also the answers to the questions that were being asked were so real. There's no way that it could just coincidentally, the answer to that question correlate with the question. It is just so real. It would blow your mind at the responses. We do have that on video. We have that on audio. I'm not sure if I'm not going to release it because it's not mine. I'm sure one day they will release it, but if I filmed it, I would release it, but I didn't. But it is recorded. But the SD session is one thing we're having great success with in finding some of the answers to what we're searching for. And some that it's getting a little hairy out there, some of the answers we're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of points towards the Nephilim, fallen angels, disembodied spirits. Do you think these shadow people were just that? Or
I don't think they were Bigfoot. I think that they were, I'm not going to say ghosts, but I think that maybe they were spirits that were of people that once were in this area. Or maybe this entity that Trey was speaking to, it was coming through on the receiver. Maybe it was interdimensional and it was making its appearance, and that's how it made its appearance.
Yeah.
I can't answer that. Yeah, I don't know.
Have you guys ever had anything follow you home with communicating with these unknown entities or spirits?
Yes. Yes. And I have had an experience, and most others in the group have had an experience. And one of the ladies, she actually has her show, Jessica Jones. She's spoken on her YouTube channel of this, of after being away from the meadow, she was at home and she had her son. At that time, I think he was like 2. He starts pointing up in the air and saying, "Ball, ball." And she looks, and there's this orb of light dancing around the room, around him. Now, her husband at that time, he could not see it. So she actually has this on film recording, and I've seen the video. Her son's like going around the room pointing at this light and saying, "Ball, ball," and she's filming it. And I think it just disappears. But she believes whatever it was attached to her from where we were researching at, and it come home with her. And myself, I've also had an experience like that. And hopefully at some point I will undergo like a regression session, because I was home. I lived by myself at that time in an apartment. And for several weeks, I had this happen. There would be these lights. They were like a whitish blue light. It would come in through my doorway of the bedroom. I would be in the bedroom, and it would be middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning. These lights would come in from the door of my bedroom, and I would be grabbed, and I was trying to get, I guess, pulled out of bed. They were trying to pull me out of bed. And with this, every time this was happening, each week it would get a little bit more aggressive. But it was like I would fight so hard. And I thought I was dreaming at the time. These dreams were super real, though. But I thought I was dreaming. I thought they were just like reoccurrent nightmares. Well, the last up in my dream to these lights coming in through my bedroom, and this thing grabbing me and trying to pull me off of the bed. Well, I was fighting against these hands, because you could feel hands. It was like I could never see what was grabbing me, but I would be fighting it. Well, I was fighting. I actually fully woke up when my head slammed against my headboard and actually chipped my tooth. Well, the next day, of course, I went to work. Or next night, I worked night shift. I went to work. I was left with fingerprints on my arm of, I believe, whatever was trying to pull me out of bed. So not only did I have fingerprints, and actually a nurse I work with said, "Honey, what did you do to your arm?" And you could see it was like a handprint, like fingers, where I was trying to get grabbed out of bed. I would have scratches on my legs. And then I ended up with the chipped tooth. So I never had that happen anymore after that. But I'm wondering if maybe those weren't dreams. Maybe something followed me home from one of the research areas, or I disturbed something that was out there and it come looking for me, and it was trying to take me where, I don't know. But I think that those dreams were not actually dreams. So hopefully one day I'll be able to undergo like a hypnotic session just to see, hey, was this actual dream or not? Because I'm not a sleepwalker. I don't do weird stuff in my sleep, but yet I would wake up with scratches on my legs.
Yeah, that is terrifying. And perhaps they followed you guys after these sessions, and maybe you opened up some type of portal or attachment, per se.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. I've not had anything happen since then. Never had anything odd happen like that beforehand. So I do believe something followed us home. And you just have to keep your eyes open be wary of stuff. 'Cause these things can attach to you. I'm not saying a Bigfoot, but I think that there are spirits out there that will attach to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. And are you still doing research with these Bigfoot groups?
I am. I am. And next month we'll be going back out on an expedition.
In Georgia?
I can't say. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. And do you guys plan on using the same techniques, or do you have something new under your sleeve?
We're seeing if there's maybe a deviation in time. That's one of the latest things we've kind of come up with, maybe to see if time moves differently in these areas where we're having these radiation spikes and where our equipment will just fail or shut off. So we're trying that. We're also trying out leaving, I'm not going to say gifting, it's not gifting, but leaving items inside of a locked case to see if we have an item going missing. We've actually done that once before. A member of a group set out a pyramid. It wasn't locked or anything, but it was like a little pyramid. And he had like a rare earth metal. He had just some like little different trinkets in there. It was left in the meadow overnight. Upon going back out there, the pyramid was intact. But yet when he opened it up, the rare earth metal, cannot remember what exactly it was, but the rare earth metal was gone. It was not in the pyramid.
Yeah, that is interesting. Have they ever gifted you guys anything? Or left anything, should I
And
say?
I've had an experience where I believe I was left something.
Hmm.
Another research outing, a weekend trip. We'd had a not really a big weekend or anything happen, but the few weekends prior, Dave had been on a solo weekend trip and tent, and he has it on audio. You can hear it running to and from the tent. It is bipedal. It doesn't sound large, it sounds smaller, but you can actually hear it grab the tent and shake it, and he hollers out, "Quit shaking my tent," and jumps out of his tent. You can hear the commotion, you can hear it run away. So I went out with him, like I said, it was a few weekends later. Him and I went out, spent the weekend. We found some tracks, like not great tracks, but we did find some tracks. And we went in the tent for the night. Nothing odd. The next morning, we crawled out of the tent, and right at the tent entry was like a pendant from a necklace, a cross pendant from a necklace. And it was laid right there on the ground. Now, we'd been in and out of the tent, before going to bed, and even during the night, getting up to go to the bathroom, we would crawled out a couple of times. And we would have noticed that pendant being right there in front of us. But yet that next morning, there it was right in front of us. So I do believe that was possibly either gifted to us or just, hey, we're in the area. Had that experience. We've had something happen with, this was actually Rick. He had left out 4 dinosaurs, 4 like toy dinosaurs of different colors in a highly active area, the same area where the thing slaps the house and the dogs befriended this Bigfoot. But he left them in a specific order. It was 4 different color dinosaurs. But the dinosaurs were there, but they had been rearranged. The color lineup was not the same color lineup that he had left. So something had actually moved the dinosaurs around. I wouldn't call that a gift, but I call that interaction, I should say. We've had a stick oddly being placed inside of a book bag or inside of the arms of a book bag. We had went on a weekend bivouac trip through the woods. and had went to bed. It had been it'd be a Saturday night. We'd all bedded down in our tent, or not actually tents, our hammocks. And the next morning, Terry had left his book bag sitting out throughout the night, and a stick was woven through the arm of one side and up under the lap belt, or the waist belt on the other side. There was no way that stick could have fallen in there, or just, someone had kicked it, like they had walked by it or something. It was a fairly large stick that had been woven in and out of the arm and the waist belt of his backpack. And not saying that was a gift, but I definitely think that was it. And that's about as far as the gift. And we don't set out gifts for them. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people do have success with that. But we haven't gifted anything, and so I don't think we've been given anything in return.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay. Do you have any questions for me? Anything you'd like to talk about?
I don't really have any questions. I mean, I could sit here and listen to your experiences. I mean, they're amazing from what I've heard. But as far as, I don't have any questions. Just keep up the good work. I appreciate all that you do, and sharing my story and getting out my story to everybody else. And I cannot give a definite answer of what these things are, what they want from us. I can't give anything other than we're trying to figure out the same things as everyone else is, and we're trying to document it as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. And hopefully this recording worked out, and I'm kind of nervous about that. And if it didn't, hopefully I can have you back on and we can do this all over again. Maybe if you and the research group ever come to the Ozarks, we can all link up and try to do a camp out and possibly look for these things in an active area.
That would be wonderful. I would be willing, and I know a lot of the other members would jump at the chance of being in the Ozarks as well.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And if I'm ever up your way, maybe we can all meet up, team up, and try to figure out what's going on.
That sounds great. And I will get those pictures over to you, and hopefully you can make heads or tails of everything. I think you can pretty much see pretty clearly everything, but I'll get those pictures over to you. That way you can share those.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be excellent. And if I ever have somebody with an eye-sighting encounter that's recent and I'm not able to make it out to Georgia, I'll definitely contact you and see if you guys can go out there and investigate the area possibly.
That would be good too. We will pack up and head out, because that's what we live for. And the fresher the encounter, the better.
Yeah, I agree. Whenever you investigate old encounters, it's like not much is going on whenever you get out there, but whenever stuff's currently going on, you can really get some good audio, some good experiences, and find new answers.
I agree. Completely agree with you.
Okay. Well, definitely keep in touch. We can talk about my encounters sometime if you guys wanted to, or if you wanted to, and I'm always open to that. Today, I'm going on the Not So Perfect Bigfoot show with Victoria, and I'm going to be talking about all of my experiences. So I'm sure it's going to be a long one.
Oh, wonderful. I'll try to tune in. I can't wait to see Victoria. She's a good one. She's a good one.
Yeah, she's a really good person.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's no problem. Thank you for coming on the show, and it really means a lot to me that you were willing to talk about all these experiences and share your personal information with me.
No, anytime. That's what us researchers do. We share our knowledge. That way we can hopefully shed light on the situation. And the more we research, the more we share, the more knowledge we can gain from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you ever been on any TV shows, anything else I can check out, or is it just all podcasts?
They're all podcasts and YouTube. No TV shows at the moment or anything.
Okay. Well, just send over whatever you got, and I'll share it on this video if it works out. Hopefully it does. and I really want to see what you captured.
All right, will do. Thank you again.
All right, no problem, and you take care, and you have an awesome day.
All right, you do the same. Thanks so much.
All right, bye, Kristen.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right, Kristen, thank you again for being a guest on the channel, and it really means a lot to me. It certainly sounds like you've had a lot of experiences in your life, and I don't blame you for going out there looking for answers and doing research out in the woods. I know a lot of people will scoff at you and kind of make fun of you for doing so, but I think it's important in order for us to figure out what is truly going on. Regular Americans need to get out there and look for answers, because the man is never going to tell us, and that's just how it is. Hopefully in the future they give us a little insight on what's going on, but I don't think that'll happen anytime soon, just because the powers that be just won't do that. And it's pretty clear, just because of all the lies that you see on the media and in public places, you can tell that something's off, and they're willing to lie about small things. So that's a given that they're going to lie about Bigfoot and aliens and anything else that is associated with the topic. Georgia certainly sounds like an awesome place to do Bigfoot research. I've heard a lot of reports come out of the state, and it's not just Georgia. There's a lot of reports coming out of Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, and the entire Appalachian Trail. So the whole place is hot, guys, and it's a vast area, so keep an eye out if you live there. But yeah, if you've had an encounter in any of these areas or anywhere in North America, please contact me sometime. I appreciate everyone for listening to this video today, and until the next one, everyone, take care and be safe.